Versa, the city-bred SUV.
It took 57 matches for the first elimination of IPL 2024. By the end of tonight, another team will join Mumbai Indians as the ones confirmed to not be able to make it to the playoffs. Punjab Kings versus Royal Challengers Bengaluru is match number 58 in Dharamsala. We build up to that on Maruti Suzuki Arena, presents ESPN Cricket for Timeout, powered by JBL, where we've got the company of Mitch McClenaghan, Dasgupta and Shashank Kishore. Gentlemen, good evening. Deep has nicked some points off you from the impact zone. Are you ready to get some points again?
Yeah, we'll get some back. Yeah, it's, well... Yeah.
You were second behind Ronak, so the points go to you.
Yes, on the count, so I'm back in my favourite chair, so it's all right. I'll be all right. I'll be
you
sweet.
Not there? Oh, you
no, I wasn't.
You were not.
You let Bush have it. Yeah. Fair enough as well. Great man for one day.
And welcome back to... And it's a welcome back to Shashank, who, other than being senior correspondent at ESPN Cricket Info, is also a lifelong RCB tragic. And this is the exact scenario RCB
slowly
fans.
moving up the impact ladder as well after a dismal first few days.
Yeah, quite like RCB. But one look at the points table, and this is familiar territory for RCB fans around this stage of the season. Both these teams are on 8 points as things stand. Whoever loses will be confirmed to be out of the playoffs race. Whoever wins, it's not like it's an easy road for them. Want to explain, Shashank?
RCB fans have a very simple thing. I mean, they need the team to win all the 3 games, by which they'll automatically eliminate DC because they can't finish on 14. RCB can at best finish on 14, and at the moment it appears as if there will be a 2 or 3 way fight for 14 on net run rate. So that's a big possibility. So RCB have done really well in that previous game to finish as quickly as they did to elevate the net run rate. But again, it's not easy. 2 of the games at home, one of them against DC, and we know Jake Fraser McGurk, what he can do at the Chinnaswamy. Another one against Chennai Super Kings. So it's not going to be easy, but the hope is still there that they can qualify, which really didn't seem like a possibility at the halfway mark.
The irony in all of this is that RCB's hopes are also linked to that of their dear rivals, because Chennai Super Kings are the team RCB need to continuously falter. It does help them that they have that last game. It is RCB versus CSK at the Chinnaswamy on the 18th of May. But Chennai win even one more of their games. They are on 14, which is already the maximum RCB can reach. And Chennai have a net run rate which is miles better than both RCB and Punjab.
True, and listen, I know 14 mathematically is still possible, but it hasn't happened ever since it's become a 10-team affair. So I think the least has been 16 points, if I'm not wrong. So,
But I think the skewing factor here is that this time you have a lot more teams between 3 and 7 who are closer. What's happened in those 2 seasons before this is that you had a GT run away. You had CSK and GT both run away last season. In fact, GT and RR in 22 and GT and CSK.
I'm not a math genius, but for me, 14 doesn't work.
One of the reasons why 14 is in contention is because Lucknow and Delhi, who are 2 teams who are on 12 right now, do play each other, which means there are points that get cancelled out. Having heard all of this, Mitch, is there going to be any stopping CSK?
Look, I still think it's relatively open, because I don't think any of these teams who are vying for these last positions have looked overly convincing. I think probably the most convincing of them all in their home conditions has been Delhi. So they're probably the biggest threat out of the teams that we're talking about. I think CSK experience will get the job, likely to be in the frame to get the job done the most. But look, I think, well, that being said, I mean, RCB have actually started to turn a bit of a corner in the last few games. And we must touch on that because obviously they're playing tonight. I think Siraj is getting back into some form. We've seen a massive increase in intent from Faf du Plessis and Virat Kohli at different stages for both of them, that have impacted their batting ability to get those higher scores. So everything's starting to click for RCB, and you know they probably are one of the teams that you look. Yes, they've got a couple of tough fixtures, but if they get going and continue this momentum, there's still a sniff, a bigger sniff than I think most of us think that, or most people watching think that they are.
Yeah, Mitch takes us immediately in the direction of where we intend to begin, because Punjab Kings have won the toss. They are bowling first, which means that Virat Kohli and Faf du Plessis come out to bat for RCB. And as Mitch points out, you've seen quite a transformation for RCB's opening pair in the last 5 games. That scoring rate, which was under 9s, which is well below par given this season, the way openers have been going, is now at 13, 287 runs in 22 overs for the two of them as a partnership. What have you made of how they've gone in these last few games, Deep?
I think they've been brilliant, especially Faf coming into some kind of rhythm and also the scoring rate, his strike rate and all. Listen, he hasn't played a lot of cricket before this, so obviously he looked a little rusty. I think ever since Will Jack's come into the side, I think they're playing a little more freely, the top two as well, because knowing that there's Will Jack, Patidar back in form, he's scoring runs. So I think up the order, those two, I think have a lot more faith in the middle order firing. That's the reason you see them bat the way they are, a lot more freely, a lot more unshackled. And I think that's the difference predominantly for me. Faf finding some game time, getting back into rhythm, and the middle order scoring runs.
Jackson, Patidar, with the unique roles they play in this team, just liberating Kohli and Faf?
Yeah, just to build on Deep's point there, I mean, for the first few games, you saw them, the top order, Kohli and Faf especially, bat to protect the middle order, or so it seemed. And also, it didn't help that they kept trying to find the right combination. You had Anuj Rawat playing in the middle order for the first couple of games. Then you had Mahipal Lomror coming in. At some point, they tried Suyash Prabhudesai as well. So, it didn't seem like they had a lot of faith in the the Indian talent in the middle order especially, and with Maxwell not being in form and Rajat Patidar floating up and down without a proper role, it seemed as if the pressure was too much on Virat and Faf. But over the last few games, you've seen Cameron Green is kind of starting to do well. Will Jacks has made a difference at 3. Patidar as a spin hitter has made a massive difference. So all this has contributed to Virat and Faf playing a lot more freely, and yeah, it's just unshackled is the right word I think that you used.
If only they'd found the settled batting lineup a couple of games in advance.
Yeah, but they were never going to, right? Because you saw from the auction and how they tried to set their side up, they were looking to play an overseas seamer, and maybe even 2, because that's what they thought was the shortfall and why they haven't been successful in previous seasons, because they have gone batting heavy in previous seasons. So you'd see they tried to switch up their tact a little bit, and unfortunately for them, none of the overseas seamers fired at all, the guys who got to start. So then they had to go back to being the batting powerhouse. I think this time around with the batting powerhouse play, it's been a little bit, hasn't affected their bowling as much. And the reason I say that is because Cam Green's got into some bowling form. He's had an impact, and before him, when Glenn Maxwell was playing, he was bowling quite well as well. So they haven't had that extra bowling resource that they've had in previous seasons. And it's taken some time for Cam Green to find that middle order role with the bat as well. And so I think it's just kind of taken a little bit of time for them to realise that they can trust Cam Green with bat and ball, and he's made a difference to the side, along with Will Jacks, who's probably had the biggest impact on this side.
Yep. RCB will hope for that batting form to continue for all of them. But for Kohli and du Plessis, as good as they've been in the last few games, a big challenge awaits right at the start, because in Kagiso Rabada, they front up to a bowler who's had the wood on them in this format. Rabada has got both of them out 4 times apiece in 9 innings against du Plessis, 13 innings against Kohli, and you just know that the start of this game and this matchup will dictate a lot of how this contest goes.
100%, and especially looking, I don't know what the weather is like. If it's overcast and stuff in Dharamsala, the pitch plays very differently. It's like very English kind of a thing where they say, you look up before you decide. That's the kind of thing in Dharamsala as well. So if there is help that way, it makes things that much more difficult for the batters. So, I mean, his quality, it just seems start of the season or most of the season that he was holding himself back. I don't know, I'm sure he's not. It just seemed like that. But then, yeah, I mean, when you're up against the best and you are one of the best, you want to prove yourself every time. So it's, call it whatever, but I think that's going to be a very interesting match of that.
On the whole, Mitch, your assessments of how Rabada's season has been fairly steady, 11 games, 11 wickets, and economy under 9 is brilliant for this season.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think he's led this attack nicely. That's his role. He's a senior bowler in this attack, and he's bowled the hard overs more often than not, particularly at the start of the season. There was other guys who were taking the first or second or third over, and he was kind of filling in the pieces and making sure that unit ticked along. So those are exceptional numbers against Kohli, and you can understand why, because he's a genuine outswing bowler with the new ball, but he also gets enough bounce to take the ball over the stumps. And we see with Kohli in the power play, anything under the stumps he dominates, but anything over the stumps he starts to struggle. So that extra bounce and pace with that away movement definitely helps Rabada against Kohli.
Yeah, and also the fact that this year they've got Harshal, so they can use Rabada differently.
Yeah.
So Rabada doesn't have to bowl in the power play, which very rarely this year he's bowled. At the most, I think 1 over in the last 5. Yeah. So it's predominantly been used as a wicket-taking option, as an aggressive option. So I think that also has kind of helped those numbers that he's got this season.
And that has been a marked change. That deployment also shows itself in the correction of the numbers, because Rabada had a couple of difficult seasons by his standards, a lot of which was down to a high death overs economy, not bowling that much over there this season.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the role change has kind of worked wonders for him. Harshal Patel finding form in the last 4 or 5 games has helped him bowl in those middle overs and bowl aggressively to take wickets rather than to contain runs. And that's kind of made a massive difference to Punjab Kings through those middle overs and going into the death where, I mean, you can't say that they've been exceptional, but they've also tried to limit scores, and teams haven't found it very easy to score of them of the last 4 or 5. So I think that's made a big difference.
All right. Before we slip further into the Punjab bowling conversation, let's find out how they are lining up for this, which is their last home game. This is the second of the games they're playing in Dharamsala, and there are some changes. We see Liam Livingstone is back. That means the overseas complement is pretty much done right at the start, and Kagiso Rabada, who we have spent the last few minutes talking up, will not feature.
Has to have a nickel.
Yeah.
Has to be injured.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, just take us through that lineup, Shashank, while I try to find out what's happened to Rabada.
I mean, Vidwat Kavirappa getting his IPL debut, comes from Karnataka, strong bowler, hits the deck hard, didn't play any form of cricket until he was 17 or 18 years old, grew up playing hockey. So he comes from this place called Coorg, which is traditionally known to produce a lot of hockey players. He's been the leader of the Karnataka pace attack over the last 2 years after the retirement of the likes of Vinay Kumar and Mithun. So he's shouldered a lot of that responsibility. And over the last 1 year, he's been in exceptional domestic form. Had a very good 50-over competition, the Vijay Hazare Trophy. Decent T20 numbers over the last 2 seasons. And he is a kind of a bowler who will... he bowls in the mid to late 130s, but he can get bounce. Bounce is his forte,
as well, right?
and can swing the new ball. So that's his... and he should like the conditions here.
So are we surprised to see if Rabada's out that he's coming instead of Nathan Ellis? Well, I think Nathan Ellis is a very, very, very good T20 player.
Just going to add what Sam Curran has said at the toss, which is, he said Livingstone comes in for Rabada, he strengthens our batting, and we haven't decided our impact. So it appears as though it's a move to bolster the batting.
Oh, they're just knee-jerking. They're knee-jerking after the last game's results, where they capitulated. They're just absolute knee-jerk reaction. And this is why they haven't been successful as a franchise historically. Because they have one bad outing with the bat, and they decide to rejig their whole side. This is where you need to, as a management, as a coaching staff, as an ownership group, this is where you need to go, this happens sometimes. Sometimes you have a bad game.
100%. Yes.
And you've got to move on. You don't need to spend extra time on trying to figure out why it failed and fix it. You've just got to brush it under the doormat and actually move on. And the more time you spend on trying to fix it with that kind of, the way it looks like they've overanalyzed it, the less success you're going to have long term.
And rejig it at the cost of what, right? Rabada is that one
at this
constant...
venue.
Done.
And now all of a sudden,
you know what? I'm just reading what he said. He's also said it seems like there's more water on that pitch, and they'll be looking at initial wickets.
Right, perfect. Well,
it doesn't add up, does it?
I'll tell you what.
Dear.
Okay, so, RCB to win.
Let's bring you RCB's lineup, because while Punjab have removed an overseas bowler and brought in an overseas batter, RCB have done the reverse. Out goes Glenn Maxwell after a 2-match return. And Lockie Ferguson is back in. And to balance the batting, they've got Mahipal Lomror in. RCB are batting first. So you can expect the bowling options in, I guess, Vaishak Vijaykumar or Yash Jha coming in.
Vaishak, yeah.
What do we make of that move for Maxwell to be out?
I don't mind this. We had a conversation yesterday in the green room about Maxwell and where does he fit into the side. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but your idea was maybe put him up to the top. I was saying you've got to keep him down as low as you possibly can and maybe just have him for the last 3 or 4 overs. And it was for the same reason, the fact that in that middle order, every time he's come in, he hasn't looked like he's in a position to score runs and do that middle order role. So we were trying to rack our brains, how do you get the most out of him?
Yeah.
And I guess they've looked at it and said, well, the rest of our batting attack lineup is going well, so we can drop him and bring in Lockie Ferguson. And that would actually kind of line up with what we've just heard about the wicket, the conditions, what Sam said about there being a little bit more juice in the wicket and the atmosphere around. So I think they've probably made the right selection call.
And I really like the Mahipal Lomror inclusion. I think he should have been there. He's the only left-hander in that batting order. And I was a little surprised that he hasn't played regularly for them in the past, in this season. I mean, I also kind of, I mean, you need someone like him who can up the ante if required. If required, he can give you an over of left-arm spin as well. So there's so much to kind of like about Mahipal Lomror. And that MPL or whatever, the Premier League and MP, he was pretty good. I saw here and there, he's got runs there and stuff like that. So he seems to be in decent form. Start of the season as well, didn't he play a couple of games where he got runs?
Yes.
Right, so I was a little surprised that, they haven't really played him as regularly as they should have.
Yeah. Can it affect Punjab's plans, that the fact that they've had to play across multiple venues? They played in Mohali last year, then they played in Mulanpur to begin with, then a couple of games in Dharamsala, as against a team that knows 7 home games at one venue and this is the condition that we'll get. And here is Punjab, who's going across to different places, calling it their home, whereas, it's probably not working out. Can that be a factor at all?
I guess if you're looking for excuses, it can be a factor. And maybe that's what they're looking for. I don't think so, mate, because I think you look at most of the international players have played at Dharamsala numerous times, whether it's like T20 World Cups or one-day World Cups or tours, bilateral series tours. So generally would have had 2 or 3 games at least at this place at Dharamsala. You probably your local guys would have played there a lot. So I don't think any conditions are foreign. I think if you're falling back on, we can only perform at this venue. I think I know what you're trying to say, and you're based off facts, right? Every time they've gone to Dharamsala, they've struggled. They've lost.
The 3-0 last 3 games.
Yeah, and I understand why you think that would not play into their hands, but
I tend to agree. I mean, kind of disagree with you to a certain extent, because
I mean, just looking at the 11,
because I'm saying
RCB have read the 11. I mean, picked the 11 a lot better on the conditions than say Punjab.
True. And
I think their selections on their 11 is just seen such a bad batting performance in the game, which they should have won. So they think that's the reason. They think that's the biggest issue, and it's a recency bias thing. And you can't be successful like just knee-jerk changing your side because of what happened the last time.
But also looking at, I mean, you look at that dugout, Punjab dugout, and you see so much of experience there, starting from coach to players. I mean, some of the players, they've played a lot of T20 cricket, and you would expect them to come up with better solutions than what they have. One is that. Second, the point that you were making about home. The difference between Mohali and Mulanpur so far this season has been huge. Right? When you look at Mohali, that's like a high-scoring 180, 200, seamer. You play more seamers than spinners there. You're trying to hit straight a lot more than square of the wicket. Mulanpur suddenly comes from 180, 200, it comes down to 150, 160. And then the spinners, you tend to depend a lot more on spinners. That's how the pitch has been this season. So that way, yes, if you're playing 5 out of the 7 games there, which you expect to win major part of those games, it does, I think, make a difference that way.
Yeah, I think the last game against Chennai actually probably was more like Singapore.
Yeah.
So it was pretty
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of turn. It was a little bit difficult to
Yeah.
score. It was around that score range. So I think the last one was just one of those games, as I've mentioned before, as a coach or as a player, move on, don't talk about it, run the same team out the next game, and just and don't give them extra pressure of thinking that they can't bat. Because that's what they're going to go into this game thinking, is that batting's their weakness. And they're going to play with fear.
Just while we're on the subject of Punjab's lineup, worth pointing out, if we bring up the graphic again, that there is another omission there, and if I'm getting it right, there is no Jitesh Sharma. He is on the bench as an option when Punjab are bowling first, but
who's keeping? Ashutosh.
they
is a
do
keeper.
have
I think it's Prabh Simran Singh would keep.
Oh, Prabh Simran. They've got Ashutosh as well. They've got Johnny Bass. They've got enough keepers. Yeah.
And funnily, now that we were just consumed by Rabada, also see that no Harpreet Brar, who has generally been such a weapon for them, especially against RCB.
There's just so much random stuff in that team.
Okay.
Last time they played, Harpreet took 2 for 13 against RCB at the Chinnaswamy.
Oh, beautifully.
Yeah. So, in this very different Punjab bowling lineup from the one we've seen, a bowler who assumes great significance is an ex-RCB player in Harshal Patel. Now, the conversations around him at the start of the season were whether he's completely lost his guile at the death. But now you look at the charts, as things stand, he's second only to Jasprit Bumrah in terms of wickets. He's also pulled down his economy considerably. Anything under 10, like we discussed so often this season, is quite good. And that strike rate is better than Bumrah, better than Natarajan. So that's quite a solid season, Mitch.
Yeah, very good. Definitely a tale of two halves, isn't it? At the start of the season, he was very obsessed with the two-bouncer rule. Bowled a lot of slow ball bouncers, and batters took him down. When the surfaces were a little bit better, it wasn't gripping as much. And I think because he was so infatuated on that two-bouncer rule, he obviously hadn't been working on his other skills as much. And as we've seen throughout the season, we've seen him progressively introduce different skills at different points. First came the Yorker, then he decided to bowl his back of the hand slower ball, which is on a fuller length, and now we've started to see that good dipping slower ball that he's had in previous seasons. So it's been a journey. I'm glad that they stuck with him and empowered him to that he will stay in the side as long as he's working on these things off the outside, because they've been rewarded in how he's bowled in the last 5 or 6 fixtures.
And we have one man on this couch who picked his brains about what could have changed, and that is Shashank Kishore, who recently had an interview with Harshal Patel. Take us through some of his thoughts, Shashank.
He spoke about how he wasn't confident enough of executing that slower dipping Yorker that you saw him get MS Dhoni with in the first half of the season. And with Harshal Patel, variables are a big factor in his bowling. I mean, if the pitches aren't in his favour, then he's tended to struggle. But as the pitches have slowly slowed down, if I can call it, he's come into the game a lot more with his cutters and the back of the length variations as well. Another thing that he spoke about was learning to analyze his own bowling differently, and how even if he's conceded 48 in 3 overs, the belief of being able to bowl a very good final over to execute. And he cited a couple of examples. One of the games against KKR, where he conceded 47 or 48 of 3 overs, and then conceded just 10 runs of the final over, and that because of which KKR finished 260. Punjab chased it down. He said that over could have easily gone for 20 or 22. It's a different equation. Another game against MI, they were looking good for 220, 215. He bowls a tight final over, just gives 7. They score 195. Punjab chased it down. So he cited the examples of those two and said, even if I've got hit for 3 overs, I have the belief that if I execute in my final over, even if my figures read 4-0, 50-2-0 or 2, you've still made an impact. So the mindset change has kind of worked in his favour.
I think the other thing that, according to me, is he was starting to get a little predictable first half of the season.
Definitely.
Obviously, the pitches were different and everything else. It's a lot more. He's got a lot more variations now. He's kind of falling back on his pace on deliveries a lot more than what he was doing start of the season. So I think he's got a lot more. He's not that one dimensional anymore. It's not like as a batter you can just line him up thinking, 4 or 5 out of the 6 deliveries would be slower ones. So now he's mixing them up really well, and I think that's got to do with confidence more than anything else.
The point you made around him not backing that dipping slow ball, next time you have a chat to him, I'd love to find out whether when he first started bowling that dipping slow ball, whether he was genuinely trying to bowl it as a Yorker, because a lot of bowlers will be going, okay, cool, I bowl this, and then all of a sudden one will come out a little bit fuller, and it's on the highlight reels over and over again. Oh, he bowls this awesome slow ball dipping Yorker, and then the next comp he comes into, he's like, oh, I'm going to bowl this slow ball dipping Yorker. And that's when he went through that period of like bowling those waist-high full tosses, and that's where his confidence. I'd love to know if he actually initially always bowled it as
He
that.
said he learned, trying to bowl that from watching Dwayne Bravo bowl at CSK.
Who looks to land
in
it
one
on
of
the
the
length.
net sessions, he just stood behind, watched him execute those slow dipping Yorkers when he went around the wicket and trying to deny the right-handers. So he said that's where he got the idea from. So he tried to experiment that, and it's just
So Bravo does that. He tries to bowl it on a length, and then that's what I'm trying to think is that did the waist high full tosses come because of a couple of deliveries that came out a bit fuller, and those are the highlight reels, and everyone's like, oh man, you bowl this amazing dipping slow ball Yorker, and that's where he lost his confidence because he started making mistakes on that. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, one of the most fascinating switches for Harshal reflects itself in these numbers, because you look at him at the death. He'd started the season quite badly. He was going at 15s in the 8 overs he'd bowled in the first half. But now in the last 5 games, not only is that economy at run a ball, he's taken 8 wickets in 30 balls. You've heard enough. Let's see how much this informs our panel as to whether Harshal should be picked while Punjab bowl first, because it's time for us to head into the impact zone. Let's take you through the drill. Each panelist will pick 3 players from each game, a batter, a bowler and a wild card. Impact points for each player are counted as per ESPN Cricinfo's Smart Stats, and the expert with the highest points tally for each match gets 3 points added to their season tally. So, Deep, since you were the winner between the two of you, Mitch gets first strike. Mitch?
Oh, I get first try. Okay, I will go. Rabada's not there. Nor is Harpreet Brar, 2 of the best bowlers in the team. I'm going to go Faf du Plessis.
So we're starting with batters. Deep, your batter.
Okay, I'm going to go with Virat.
All right. Shashank?
Will Jacks.
Will Jacks. Okay, RCB top 3 done. Deep, bowler for you.
I'm going to go with Mohammad Siraj.
Siraj. Shashank?
Swapnil Singh.
Ooh.
Spinner.
Mitch.
Dry pitch.
I will go Lockie Ferguson.
Lockie Ferguson. And wildcard, Shashank, get us underway.
My namesake, Shashank Singh.
Well done. Mitch?
I will go Cameron Green.
Cam Green. And finally, Deep.
Impact player would be... God. What do I get?
Harshal Patel.
Harshal Patel, you reckon? Yeah, I think it should be the bowlers who do well. So I'm gonna go with Harshal Patel. Okay, I'll go with Harshal Patel.
Great. Leave nothing for me. What is left? Let's see. All right. I'm going to pick... You guys have pretty much picked all of RCB.
Yep.
So that's done. So I'm going to go...
No, I was tempted to go with
Riley Russo. Besto, Riley Russo and Arshdeep.
Besto, Riley Russo, Arshdeep. Okay.
Nice.
All the best to everyone. Scores and outrageous picks. Mitch.
236. And either Coley, du Plessis and Will Jacks to score more than 40 each.
All three to score 40 each. Okay.
High scoring, you're saying? Oh, okay.
Deep.
I'm going to say 175.
Outrageous pick.
Outrageous. Kavirappa to pick 2 wickets. Would that be outrageous enough?
Should that qualify?
Should
I
be
will
3.
let you
Outrageous.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Outrageous should be 3.
Shashank? You are all things domestic cricket. So, no, first tell me whether I should take Deep's pick
Yeah,
it?
you can. I mean, he's making his
Just two
IPL
wickets.
debut up against Faf. Virat. So
Give me 2 with a score. Give me an economy range and I'll
okay,
take it.
so around 32-ish.
So 2 for 32 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Thereabouts have landed me in a lot of trouble when it's come to decision making in the impact zone. So I will take it as 35 and under.
Yeah, no.
Okay, 32 and under.
32 and under and 2 wickets.
under.
All
Okay.
right. Shashank.
210 for RCB.
God, you both reckon it's a high scoring game?
Kohli and Faf in a century opening stand.
I'll take that. 100 plus stand. Those don't come too often. Virat Kohli almost fell in the first
Thank you,
over,
Shashank.
which would have been an ominous start for Deep Dasgupta. But there you have it. It's quite the range. 175 to 236, which makes some sense because Dharamsala has traditionally been high scoring, but the first game here was low scoring. So let's see how things pan out for RCB. We'll pick up the conversation at the end of their innings. Be sure to join us then on Maruti Suzuki Arena. Presents ESPN Cricket for Timeout, powered by JBL. Download the ESPN Cricket for mobile app if you haven't already. It'll have you covered with the fastest scores and a lot more. See you in 20 overs time.
All new hot and techy Brezza, the City Bred SUV.